And speaking of stuff we can't talk about on the air, the draft, the entire WWE roster has now been drafted. Over there, over there, over there, say a prayer to beware, 'cause the Yanks are coming, and we won't come back till it's over there. They should have had George M. Cohan or some other son of a bitch write the WWE draft. Just some other random son of a bitch besides George M. Cohan.
Do you consider yourself a patriotic person?
Well, I used to be until the whole place went to shit, and then I'm starting to have to rethink that too. But I was a big Yankee Doodle Dandy fan. We saved the world once. We just ain't been able to do it in the last 80 years or so. But anyway.
Well, there were only more Sergeant McCoys.
If there were only more Sergeant McCoys in the world, the place, people would fall in line. However, having said that, I was mentioning the draft. Brian, I figured out that the equivalent entertainment value of watching Raw is if you take a piece of American cheese and you accidentally drop it on the kitchen floor and you don't notice it for about a day, and then you come back and you sit down in a chair and you literally watch it turn green. That's about the equivalent entertainment value. We have talked about how little action or happenings there have been the past few weeks on that program, but this one, it was people reading other people's names and interspersed with matches that started, and then the majority of them happened in a commercial break so that some more people could come back and talk to us or to each other. It was a schlag.
This has been happy talk, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to get right into it.
You certainly did.
They got a big pay-per-view coming up this weekend, Backlash. I can't even back into it on pay-per-view because of a fellow named Canelo Alvarez.
That fellow is a very popular boxer.
Well, I don't know him from Tom's House Cat, and I'm not really anxious to see him this weekend. I wanted to watch Backlash on a real regular fucking television where I have a real regular remote with on-screen speed search to get me through the 10-minute entrances. But instead, I got to watch the Peacock to see this thing even. They can't even get it on television anymore on the pay-per-view. How the mighty have fallen. Vince McMahon made pay-per-view popular. And now we can't even get the goddamn thing on our cable system.
Vince McMahon, or as he was known in the 80s, Mike Tyson.
Well, come on now.
Come on, who made pay-per-view? Pay-per-view was big for WWF. I'm not disputing that. Mike Tyson was the pay-per-view phenomenon of that era.
Well, he may have been a phenomenon, but goddamn, he wasn't fighting fucking 4 to 12 times a year like Vince was pay-per-viewing. Was he?
Back then, maybe 2-3 times a year on pay-per-view.
Well, see, he was lagging behind. Anyway, I bet right now you could put Mike Tyson fighting a fucking guy at Kroger on pay-per-view and it would get on pay-per-view, but Backlash ain't on pay-per-view. Night 1 of WrestleMania wasn't on pay-per-view here in Louisville because of, who was it then? Roy
Jones
J.
Jr.
Johnson Jr.
No, Roy Jones Jr.
Raymond J. Johnson Jr. Now you can call him Ray, or you can call him Jay, or you can call him Ray J. You can call him Mr. Johnson, but you doesn't got to call him Raymond. But anyway, what do you got?
Oh, that was your end? But anyway, I thought you were still going.
I don't know. Well,
that's a transition for you usually.
Bill Saluga.
That's right.
Was his name. Google it, kids.
And he
was hilarious.
He rode that gimmick all the way to the end.
The only other gimmick that I can think of that was beaten into the ground and pulverized as much would be Father Guido Sarducci.
Oh, that's a good pick. That is a good pick. There's a lot of stuff on those early SNLs that people love. Then you go back and you watch it, you get pretty sick of it pretty quickly.
Well, he was kind of like the Orange Cassidy of network television of his time. It was like, oh, yeah, here he comes. Well, here this comes.
What's
We've
that?
Well, you want to talk about
I have no idea where we're going or where we are. What's going on?
It's your program. I'm just trying to fill
what?
time till I call Sergeant McCoy back.
You see?
Do you want to talk about?
You're going to get court-martialed if you keep this up.
No, we don't know for sure what branch of enforcement he's in. He could be in the military. He could be a police officer. He could be in the FBI. He could be in a Salvation Army.
He sounded high up.
He sounded high up.
He sounded like he's up there on the chain.
He didn't seem like he had a lot of time to chat, did he?
Sergeant McCoy only has so much time in his day to deal with morons like us.
Well, he should have handed us off to Corporal Boyle.
What were you going to transition to? You had something you were going to talk about.
You want to talk about this fucking Raw, this draft. That's the big news. That's what everybody's waiting with bated breath to hear about, is this big draft. And they've given it another 3 hours on television. I still don't understand why it's a big deal, why anybody would care, what the logic is. They had a group of 5 this time. It was drafted as a pick. Does that mean that each one of those people is only worth 20% of a human being? Or are they only worth 20% of their salary?
Are you talking about the idea that they were grouped together when they were drafted?
Yes. Should they cut their pay? Are they paying them each individually, but they draft them together as a group?
How does that work in the world of kayfabe? If you sign a contract with one of the brands to make X amount of dollars and you get traded, does your contract come over?
I don't know.
Not even traded, drafted.
Yes. But besides that, again, after they said tag teams might be broken up and alliances and factions altered, it's going to be game-changing. Not only not one, but they didn't even pick them individually to go to the same place. They just said, okay, here are these 5. Who was the 5 people? Hold on. I got to go through my notes here.
The LWO, probably.
Yes. Escobar, Toro, Toro, Wild, Vega, and Mysterio. 4 people and a woman, as you would term it.
That's not how I would term it. I would term it 4 male wrestlers and a woman.
You first said 3 people and a woman. You know you did. 5 people. I wrote this draft is not even consistent in its own illogic. But anyway, I guess we should go from the opening of this, because we're treating a serious subject here with frivolity and not being stern about this thing, because this is people's lives are on the line here with what
people's
program
lives.
They're wrestling on.
How?
Well, okay, let's say, for example, normally you were on Raw and you would work the Saturday, Sunday, and Monday on their house show tour or whatever. But then you go to SmackDown, and now you're working the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or whatever. Well, let's say that you normally would have been leaving home on Saturday and coming back on Tuesday morning, but instead you leave on Friday. And when you leave on Friday, there's a goddamn major fucking accident on the interstate, and you're run over by a septic pumping tank truck. And you're covered in shit, and you're dead. That's a life-changing thing, to be run over by a septic tank pumping truck and not only be killed, but be left covered in humans' waste and sewage. That would be life-changing.
It certainly would. I don't know why your mind went there of all the examples you could have used.
Well, you never know. You always hear somebody was in an accident. Well, normally they wouldn't have been there. But they've changed their routine and this happened. Well, see? That same thing.
Are you advocating for never changing your routine ever?
Well, no, because there's sometimes you need to. If people are actively looking for you, you know, you've seen the mob specials.
I don't know what you're talking about. No.
The mob specials that they have, the mafia. Well, you may have heard rumors.
Hollywood. That's all Hollywood.
It's a Hollywood creation. Well, in those movies and in those books and stories and documentaries about this fictitious thing of ours, a guy would change his routine every day. He would he'd go to the same place, but he'd take a different route. to throw people off the scent. Now, that might be something, if people are actively looking for you, that might be something that you need to do. But otherwise, if you change your routine, you could get run over by a septic tank pumping truck. And as I mentioned, not only be killed, but embalmed and entombed in a variety of waste, shit, and sludge. So don't do that kind of thing.
I guess not.
Do not get drafted from Raw to SmackDown, or shit will take place.
Well, speaking of septic waste and sludge, let's talk about the draft.
Well, we might as well. So Triple H came out. This is Raw for May the 1st. It should have been April 1st, April Fool's Day, but May the 1st. And Triple H came out again like he did on SmackDown and tried to justify the new World Heavyweight title belt. And they've gone from the best angle that they had in years, the bloodline against the babyfaces, to the most nonsensical, boring bullshit that they've done in ages, which is this draft. And by the way, Brock Lesnar has negotiated. He can just go anywhere he wants to. He can be on either show, anytime, any place, anywhere, but you never know. Good Lord. So, and by the way, Triple H did inform us that the new rosters go into effect Monday, March the 8th. Did you catch that?
I did, right after the pay-per-view.
March the 8th.
Oh, he said March. Yeah, I did
He said March the 8th.
I caught it when he said it. I didn't catch it when you said it.
You didn't catch it when I said it. You listen to him more than you listen to me. The hell? We've known each other this long.
Well, he's very pretty.
You never ask for a second cup of coffee anymore. Anyway. So, the number one draft pick on today's program, they already had, a dozen Friday, and then they picked a bunch more on the internet. So this is, as we talked about, it's nonsensical that they're skipping over every other draft in sports. You pick the next available best star, right, when it's your turn. But in this case, they're just skipping back and forth. So they've drafted to Raw Rhea Ripley, the SmackDown Women's Champion, which you called a day or two ago when Bianca, who was the champion of Raw, is now going to SmackDown, right?
I think anyone could have called that, to be
so,
honest.
but what do they just hand off belt bags on their way by in the parking lot? But here, Rhea Ripley is drafted here, but Melba Toast and Plum Pudding from NXT got picked Friday night before Rhea Ripley.
But that's the thing. Was Triple H saying that only half of the roster was allowed to be drafted on SmackDown?
Well, yes, that's how they came up. Because, see, this whole thing doesn't make any sense in kayfabe or out of kayfabe. And if they had done a draft the normal way, then they would have drafted the 15 best people or whatever on Friday night, and we'd have been left with some of the people that they drafted on Monday night anyway. But it would have been even more lopsided. But then that doesn't make any sense, because then we've never been told who determines which people get picked on what day, or who determines which people get picked for what brand. Or why that 3 and 4 and 5 people can get picked at a time, but in other cases it's just one. Or why that if a person is a champion, whether male or female, on one of the programs, that they can just get picked to be on the other program. Well, then does that automatically make them the Raw champion? Well, if they're from SmackDown, well, what does the Raw champion have to say about that? Maybe they don't want the SmackDown belt. It doesn't make any sense. Number 2.
And by the way, how come the rest of the Judgment Day were drafted without her, but then she still came out with them?
But she's still with them. And they did that on somebody else too. I'll go through my notes. But Austin Theory goes to SmackDown. Seth Franklin Rollins goes to Raw, and Charlotte Flair goes to SmackDown. That was the first set of announcements.
Did everyone just go to where they were? Well, Austin Theory went to SmackDown. That's different.
Yeah, no, they're changing it. But again, everybody's been... You can't tell whether everybody's been on both shows unless you write down the results and refer to them each week to begin with. So then Triple H introduced Paul Lee, and Paul came out and looked at the new belt and then waddled to the ring. And Paul did a promo in the ring. And, you know, it's better to listen to Paul than anybody else on this program, but Jesus Christ, nobody is in a hurry at all to get to any kind of a point. And the show-long thread was that Roman, Solo, and Paul are going to SmackDown. They got drafted Friday, 3 of them at the same time. But tonight, the fate of the Usos will be decided. And he's going to address them in private tonight. And then the Usos are going to deal with the baby faces at Backlash. And Friday, a week from Friday, Roman's going to address multiple issues and blah, blah, blah. And then, see, I had to write all this down. And then Paul started talking about freaking jokes and freaking clowns that were challenging Roman Reigns. And of course, that means that here came Seth Franklin Rollins. And they stood there while the crowd went, oh. This is all the same segment, by the way. The first segment of the draft and now into this.
To make sure you get nonstop commercials the rest of the show.
Well, and I know, and this was casual, scripted conversation between two buds. We're kind of tense with each other. Paul gets a phone call in the corner. Seth makes the fans sing louder so Paul can't hear Roman. So there's more singing. Oh. And then finally, Paul tells Seth that he's pissing Roman off, and Seth asks the fans how long it would take him to stomp Paul's head in. And he's counting down from 5 when here comes more music. And Jesus, it's Solo. And Solo gets in the ring, and Paul just holds him back and says, hey, Roman Reigns is pulling strings for a match tonight between you, Seth Franklin Rollins, and Solo. And Seth said, well, never mind the string pulling, I'll accept right now. And he struck a pose, and they all walked off. And we were half an hour into the fucking program.
What did you think of some of what Heyman was saying there about the idea of Roman Reigns going for the other belt? We hadn't even thought about that, the idea that Roman Reigns could go for the other belt, because then beyond the idea of him winning it and having a third belt, the idea of him getting to the finals and losing is another option. And then, well, again, with him and Cody, there's unresolved shit. How else are we going to get there?
You know, a lot of that might just be swell if they hadn't already just said that Roman Reigns was drafted to SmackDown and the new world champion would be exclusive to Raw.
So why was Heyman saying all that?
So why was Heyman? Because they can't even keep track. That's what I'm saying to you right now.
Heyman's face when Rollins was counting down and Solo finally came out, the way it changed to confidence was great. He's so good out there. He's the best. He really is.
He's always great. But there you have the most cunning linguist in all of pro wrestling that can't even keep all these loopholes in logic straight. How would it be possible that if, again, they've talked about free agents are able to go to both programs, generally the job guys that are going to just get beat and or almost, who we don't want to get tired of on any one program, and Brock Lesnar, who they'll take him in their home movies if they can talk him into showing up. But if Roman's is on SmackDown and the world champion is exclusive to Raw, how is Roman going to go after or challenge for unless they just start crossing back, in which case, what the fuck? Would you like me to continue?
Would I like you to? I expect you to continue.
All right, that's a better way to phrase it. So, by the way, we're going to skip over the 30 minutes into the program. The first match we got was Liv and Raquel against Bayley and Kai. And they went a minute to the break. So I said, fuck this. I'm speeding up to the next draft segment. I think they got another couple minutes on the other side. Then they had Booker and Sharmell come out. And once again, the personalities are fine, but what do any of, as you'll see later, any of these people have to do? It was like celebrity presenters at the Oscars. They had nothing to do with this whole thing. Going to Raw is Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, the tag team champions,
who have been on Raw every single week for as long as I can remember.
And going to SmackDown, the Usos with Roman Reigns, Solo, and Paul already have been picked to be there, so they didn't split up the bloodline.
They did not want to work Mondays.
And Raw also now gets Balor, Priest, and Dominic to go along with Rhea. And that's where then SmackDown gets Escobar, the Lucha Suits, Vega, and Mysterio 5 for 1. So that was that segment.
This draft sucks. Let's just say it right now. It's so boring. Nothing's happening. The same people that are all together, no one's broken up. Most of these people are drafted to the show they're already on. I'm looking at a color chart here, like where they started and where they're going. Almost everyone's on just the show they were on.
Well, speaking of a show that nobody should be on, that we got a match 53 minutes into the program. The bell rang for the second match. It was Brown Strongman and Ricochet against Fat Otis and Shoosh Boy with Model Girl. And they didn't go to a break in this match because it wasn't long enough. The babyfaces won in 2 minutes. And then we get Shawn Michaels and Adam Pearce to do the next picks. But before any of those picks take place, Brock music, Brock entrance, Brock to ring for a promo. And he says, hey, Fort Worth, how does it feel to look at the only real cowboy in Texas? Of course, now I think he's let this Saskatoon thing go to his head, being on a ranch out there in the middle of nowhere, because he's from Minneapolis. Minneapolis not noted for its cowboys, except for Blackjack Lanza. So anyway, Adam Pearce comes out and brings out every outlaw wrestler in the state of Texas dressed up as security guards. And you can tell the boys a mile away, and they all have the same dumbfounded look on their face. They look both scared to death and pleased to be there. And nobody knows how to act like a security guard, and it's completely preposterous.
The security guards are pleading with him. Please, just get out of the ring. Please, just come on. All of them are doing that.
I have been, and I'm not saying security guards, just regular unlicensed, unbadged, unweaponed security guards have detained me, but I've been actually arrested a couple times, and I don't remember them asking me nicely. Anyway, they come out as about 12 of them, and Brock just looks and says, well, I think you need to get some more guys. So he waves out the second crowd, the second wave, and there comes about another 8 more. And just then Cody's music plays. And now all the security guards are on the floor. The Brock is in the ring. Music's playing for Cody. His entrance video just starts, and Cody comes in the ring from behind. Brock spins around, and Cody nails him with one shot. And Brock takes a bump and rolls out, and security, all 20 of them, swarm Cody. And unlike last week...
they were waiting to get their hands on him after last week.
I think they brought some of the same guys back because they had a grudge. They held him. Good, last week he beat up like 10 of them, right? So then now there's 20, so they held him. And Brock's in the aisleway, smiling and laughing at him, holding his jaw, but like, yeah, I got to you again. And Cody's screaming and they won't let him go. And what we had there was a one-punch brawl. There was one punch thrown in this whole fight, and otherwise it was the security guards just holding on to Cody.
Are you saying that's a problem, or you're saying that's okay?
No, I'm saying that was a goddamn 10-minute segment for one motherfucker to throw a punch when you get down to it. But anyway, yeah, we are well over an hour into this program, and we've had one 2-minute match and one, I think, 3 minutes of it that showed, and one punch in the big brawl at the top of the 9 o'clock hour. So, but now don't worry, because Shawn Michaels is here to draft some more people. And Pierce couldn't join him back at the podium because he was already in the middle of the skirmish. Does Shawn Michaels now look 150 pounds in a suit?
Yes.
And I mean, he's not getting fat. He's getting skinny, and his shoulders are shrinking. He's having the opposite effect. All the other ex-wrestlers, they balloon. He's like me. He's lighter now than he was when he was in the ring. Anyway, briefly, Raw gets Liv and Raquel. SmackDown gets Oscar. Raw gets the New Day. And SmackDown gets Sheamus, Ridge, and Butch,
who have been on every SmackDown forever.
And they said, and they had the Brawling Brutes logo. They said members include. Where did McIntyre go?
He got drafted to Raw.
Well, son of a bitch.
Last time on SmackDown, I think. Didn't they draft him to Raw?
He and Sheamus don't get along too good anyway. And you heard about Butch. This is not the only, time this past week that that Butch, was the victim or the center of a custody battle.
What?
Yeah. Butch's parents they've split up, and they were having a custody fight to see who'd get to take care of little Butch. And the judge finally called Butch in and said, well, Butch, would you rather live with your mother? And Butch said, oh, no, Judge, she beats me. Well, would you rather live with your father? Oh, no, Judge, he beats me. Well, who do you want to live with? I want to live with L.A. Knight. He don't beat anybody.
But L.A. Knight beat him.
Oh, I forgot. That's right. I should have used that joke.
It was the only time L.A. Knights won a match.
The only time L.A. Knights won. See, I put it out of my mind. Anyway, so then they did Riddle and Jimmy Uso. They rang the bell for the third match an hour and 18 minutes into the program. They went 30 seconds, and Jay interfered, and the match stopped while Owens and Zayn did comedy on the outside to fool the referee into ejecting Jay for something else, and then they went to the break in under a minute. And they came back, and Riddle beat him in about 3 more minutes. And so now then here came Rob Van Dam back. Rob Van Dam looks like a guy, if this was the 70s, he would have avoided the draft. But now he's out there drafting people left and right. And, of course, he's with someone who probably would have avoided the draft or any other type of strenuous activity, Eric Bischoff, and who tried to talk to the people, and they were chanting RVD over the top of him. Now I see why Bischoff has been knocking he got a couple of AEW paydays and then started knocking AEW and Tony Khan because they finally decided to give him a couple more paydays over on the other side of the street. So he's just a mercenary. He'll just go places and do things for money. Used to be called a whore. Anyway, so I don't know if this is a good segue or not, but Trish Stratus is going to Raw.
Not a good segue.
Not a good segue, but it was there.
By the way, it's interesting she got drafted to Raw just because she's a Hall of Famer who was brought back for the build-up to WrestleMania that did the heel turn. I guess this means they expect her to be around after the feud with Becky plays out?
Well, either that or they just didn't want to leave her out because it would have hurt her feelings.
She should be like Brock. She can go wherever she wants.
I'll do what I want. Respect my authority. Speaking of authority that you don't have anymore, to SmackDown goes Karrion Kross and Scarlett. Boy, has anybody lost buzz due to the loss of their buzz cut, I guess, more than Karrion Kross?
No.
Woo. And going to Raw, where I think they may have been or might not, I don't know, Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler.
No, they were on SmackDown.
And now to SmackDown LA Knight. So he can do some jobs over there.
That's where he's been doing jobs.
Miz was in the ring for a promo with Shaky Nakamura. And they gave this about 10 minutes. Have you noticed that? This is the first time I've heard Nakamura really speak. He sounds like a Japanese Truman Capote.
What?
There is there's no intimidation factor in his voice at all. And
that may be the extreme example, Truman Capote.
Well, I'm just saying. Go back and listen to some of it. So Shaky spent about 5 minutes teaching the Miz how to say "I have tiny balls" in Japanese without Miz realizing what he was repeating over and over in Japanese. And then Shaky kicked him and knocked him out. And then we had another match. Now, bear in mind, match number 4 started an hour and 50 minutes into the program. And we'd had about 10 minutes of wrestling in that hour and 50 minutes, and the match was almost versus already. Did you see this one, Brian?
I saw the match. I don't remember the opponent's name, but I saw the match.
No, nobody else does either, but it was almost, because he's almost ready to be a wrestler versus already because he was already in the ring. And almost won in 1 minute. So now we're up to 4 matches with 11 minutes of on-screen action. And then here we go with another draft. Road Dogg and Molly Holly. I like Molly Holly, but what the fuck?
Anyone who works there. Anyone who works there and is backstage.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, presenting the next round of picks, Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan.
They're not going to find them.
Well, they're going to look for them on Most Wanted Treasures. Anyway, so Road Dogg and Molly Holly announced these. On Raw, Brown Strongman and Ricochet. Apparently, they're treating Brown as the draft pick, and Ricochet is just a tumor that's growing on his side.
Oh, come on.
To SmackDown, Shotzi. And I believe the Tank goes with her. To Raw, Bronson Reed.
Speaking of tanks, to Raw, Bronson Reed.
Yeah. Which Tank brother is he, Sherman or Septic? And then to SmackDown, Pretty Deadly from NXT, who looked pretty shady to me. And that was that round of drafts. And then the Judgment Day came to the ring. Since they're still together, and I wrote I can't take another promo, and I was going to try to zip it, and then Rey Mysterio and Zelina and Escobar come out and did a promo from the entranceway. And the fuck? And I realized they're going to have a 6-man or a 6-person.
You didn't see Dominic speak on the mic?
I couldn't take it.
Oh, it was incredible. You wouldn't have heard anything. You've never heard a reaction like this. He can't get a word out. The fans won't let him speak. It's so loud, the reaction, because everyone took their turn talking. Damian Priest did a really fired up interview in Spanish about Bad Bunny. Finn Balor is, Finn Balor. Rhea's great. They go to Dominic to speak. Everyone gets their turn. And the crowd got so loud he couldn't get a word out. It was incredible. He's got the most heat there.
I wish the crowd would do that for all of these interviews until they can teach some of these people to get to the goddamn point. Can you imagine what I would have done back in my day, if they said, okay, Cornette, you and so in the opening promo, now let's keep this under 20 minutes.
It would be like those promos you did on Fort Worth TV, but they said go slower.
Oh, yeah, they wouldn't let me talk fast because they were like, wait, you did all the material in 8 minutes. We had it down for 20. Good, I got it out of the way, so let's have some fucking action. Anyway, so they do a 6-person, Rey, Escobar, and Zelina against Dominic, Rhea, and Priest. And again, I wouldn't have skipped the Judgment Day promo had there not been 2 fucking hours of talking in front of it. So then I think, okay, Rhea Ripley starts this match with Zelina Vega. And I'm okay, I'll watch this. And they go 20 seconds, and then the men got in. And within 2 minutes, they'd gone to the break. And okay, let's see what happens on the other side. Maybe 3 minutes later, Priest wins with a choke slam over Mysterio because he's going to the other show and they aren't going to cross paths anymore. There's no time. There's more people in the match than they get minutes on the air to do anything. So how do you... And I mean, I'm not saying they need to go 30 or 40 minutes either, like either the self-indulgent bullshit sometimes on AEW or the pay-per-view fiascos. Can't we get something that's just not too hot and not too cold, just right?
There's no sense of urgency with anything on the show. And if you think about classic Raw when things were popping off, whether it was the Attitude Era or even before it, or even after it, when there's exciting stuff going on, there's a sense of urgency. There's never any of that on Raw.
Oh, and there was controlled panic in the back in those days because you had to be ready and you had to have your shit. You knew things were going to be happening and boom, boom, boom. And everybody was on the game, right? It looked like firefighters going to the gorilla position. Now it's like fucking city council meeting. I'd like my 5 minutes to speak now. And I mean, again, I know the matches don't all have to be 30 minutes, and sometimes it's better that they're not. But if you're not going to show a 7 or 8 minute match, don't put a commercial break in it. You're not hooking anybody with this. The paraplegics and people in an iron lung with no remote control may not change the channel when you go to the commercial, but, you know, a fucking, oh my God, he's fallen down. We'll be back in 4 minutes. That don't keep you. When Dick Beyer, the Destroyer, came to Mid-South Wrestling in '84 because he had trained that Mark Reagan kid, and he came down and did 2 weeks in the territory with him, putting him over every night. The Destroyer, one of the biggest stars in the history of wrestling, at that point, the most famous domestic masked man in the United States. And he every night was in the opening match putting over a kid that nobody had ever heard of because he trained him and he was a businessman. But when he first got there, because at that point, we were having 7 matches on a card, and you didn't want the show to go, you know, bell time 7:30, we need to be out of the building 10 to 10, right? So Dundee goes up to him and says, Dick, just put him over however you want. Let's get about 8 minutes. And Destroyer said, how the fuck can I have a match in 8 minutes? He said, okay, well, just get it right then. So he went out and went 18 minutes with this kid, tore the house down, and he was a master of psychology, but 18 minutes, the opening match. And this happened the next 2 or 3 nights, and then finally, they cut the time limit down to 15. So then he'd go 14. I think by the last 2 or 3 days, it was a 10-minute time limit match. But nevertheless, I digressed, didn't I?
Somewhat, but you had a point.
What were we talking about?
You had a point.
I had a point, but if I comb my hair right, nobody will notice it. So then, Teddy Long and JBL, they were brought back from SmackDown Friday. They're a great announcing team. And boy, did they leave them the dregs to announce. To Raw goes Otis and Shush Boy. To SmackDown, Booger. They're calling him the Meat Mountain now.
Yeah, what's that about?
Something about his personal life. I'm not sure. In Raw, or going to Raw, Katana Chance and Caden Carter. And to SmackDown, our boy we used to like and haven't seen him in a long, long time, Cameron Grimes.
Who apparently he has no chest hair at all now from the photo I saw that they put up.
And that's what I'm afraid of. Yeah, that's the only thing that made him look interesting. When they shaved him, he just looked like a job guy with a bad body. Anyway, so that was the draft, and let me just make brief mention of the main event of the program, and then we'll talk about the auxiliary. There's been another auxiliary draft announcement, right?
Supplemental picks.
Supplemental picks. That's where you were picking the first time, but you couldn't quite get all the fucking snot, so you had to go back and pick some more. But the main event.
As well as wrestlers that were declared free agents.
Yes, but does that mean they can go to work for AEW or Impact or Ring of Honor or somebody else if they want to?
No, it means they can go to Raw or SmackDown. I guess not even NXT, technically.
So they're not the kind of free agent that CM Punk is, where he can just go to other people's shows and just hang out and visit.
No, that's an actual free agent if he's free of his contract, that is.
Well, he's not free of his contract. He's just a free adult male over the age of 21 and able to do what he wants. So you need to respect his authority.
He's just an agent then, not a free agent.
Well, in that case, we need to get him a better agent.
How about Sergeant McCoy?
Sergeant McCoy would do the job. All right, so we have had about 16 minutes of mostly bad wrestling in 2 hours and 50 minutes of this program, and the bell rang with 10 minutes on the air for Solo and Seth Franklin Rollins. And I swear to God that they opened this match, Seth did, by ducking away and leading the fans in singing twice in the ring, and then bailed to the floor to do it. And after almost 2 minutes of doing that, they actually started fighting. Solo stopped him with a kick, and they went to the break. There's 8 minutes left on the air, and they went to a 3.5-minute commercial break. They come back with 5 minutes. Why come back at all? Why? Maybe I've got to dig up some of my old formats, because maybe I'm just going crazy, but when we had a main event on Raw back in the days when people actually watched it, we did everything we could to get it in the ring and give them uninterrupted time once the bell rang, so that, because the people, whether it's Austin or Undertaker or Triple H or Mankind or whoever the fuck it may be, we didn't want to just show a minute of it and then go to the break and come back with 4 minutes left. That's what was drawing the money, was our stars. Oh, maybe I've answered my own question. Anyway, they came back. I got distracted by the pest control people that showed up and forgot to hit pause. And when I looked around, the show was already over, and I didn't want to fast forward through 2 hours and 55 minutes to get back to where I was to see what fucking happened. What happened?
What happened? That's a good question. What happened?
It was 12 hours ago or less you saw it.
I think Franklin, actually, I don't know. I don't even remember what happened. I have no idea what happened.